Today I have returned with an even more spicy list than before, and also I am angrier than before. I can't believe these 10 great JRPGs were destroyed by critics. So let's begin. Number 10, the Dooffield Chronicle. I understand that real-time strategy RPGs aren't for everyone. I also understand when a game gets a lot of hype only to fail expectations. Still, the Dooffield Chronicle having around a 7 score on most websites is insulting. All they saw was the Square Enix logo in there and expected a AAA masterpiece. Why can't people learn how to differentiate the publisher from the developer? Arkrise made this game, and it's a small studio that merely got support from Square Enix. It wasn't going to be the second coming of the strategy RPG Christ, so of course it's low budget. But what the game achieved with whatever money the developers had was impressive, and its addicting gameplay mechanics should honestly be a treat for fans of the genre, right? Well, apparently not in Metacritic, where the user reviews were far harsher than the critics themselves. It's absolutely ridiculous how people can't appreciate certain types of games or RPGs and ultimately trash them like this. I call this ignorance. Ignorance from never having truly played a really bad game in their lives. They have no clue what bad really means. Number 9, Shadow Hearts. Yes, it's really hard to believe this iconic and underrated game got destroyed by critics back in the day. Sadly, it had to compete against the powerful Final Fantasy X, so most reviewers were definitely and extremely biased. Obviously, user scores in different websites far differ from the imbecilic journalism that plagued this unique game. Maybe it was too dark for them, maybe it was too difficult, or you know what? Let's face it, it wasn't Final Fantasy X. I mean, nobody back then was expecting a 9 or a 10 out of 10 score, but 7.3? And oh my freaking god, 5.5 on IGN. Well, I'm glad there have been many JRPGs out there whose reputation has been restored by many players and even content creators. Not every JRPG in this video or even the previous video has had this luxury though, but Shadow Hearts is thankfully a very well respected RPG nowadays, all thanks to more insightful people than the so-called professional journalists out there. Number 8, Redemption Reapers. I am seriously insulted by this. Again, I see its flaws, it isn't perfect, but no way in hell is this a 6.1. Of course, users think otherwise, like 9 out of 10 cases. Let me explain why this game though might have gotten low scores. First of all, it looks a bit more like a Western RPG than a Japanese, so yeah, no anime or manga style here. Second, and I think this is the most important, the game's like Shadow Hearts. It may have been too edgy and dark for your snowflake reviewers out there, especially with that tragic ending. And third, quite important as well, the game wasn't impressive in terms of nearly everything. But that's because this is not a AAA game. Sure, it was developed by some legendary creators from Capcom, but Capcom did not publish this or even made this. You could say that while not an indie RPG, it was practically developed independently. So my Dooffield Chronicle argument is even stronger here. Why expect a AAA masterpiece out of a game that clearly was never meant to be? Why? Number 7, Arkrise Fantasia. This Wii exclusive is legendary for having an absolutely atrocious English dub. Often it can be as bad as the infamous Chaos Wars, but unlike that PS2 game, there is no Japanese dub option here, sadly. Well, I think it's one of those, it's so bad it's good, and I honestly got used to most of the actors. Another thing it's got going on the bad side is that it's a brutal grind fest. Battle system is not average, and it's both tricky and strategic, but nothing changes the fact that you'll be grinding for levels every 2 or 3 bosses in a row. It's hard. Story's great, a bit tragic, but well written. Graphics are colorful, traditional RPG gameplay is there, music is fantastic, Yasunori Mitsuda composed some themes, but the scores are 6.5 or 6.4 even, as if saying it's below average. You gotta be kidding me. Sure, it's not a 9 out of 10, but not even a 7? Are you seriously telling me you gave it such a bad score for having bad English dub and for being too hard? I wonder if this game ever got remastered, rebalanced, and with Japanese dub, the scores will increase. But with modern game journalism being what it is today, well, it was this bad before, so yeah, imagine now. Number 6, Chistar. There's something wrong with the scores of this game? Metacritic shows these numbers for critic and user scores and they make absolutely no sense to me. It's rare to see such a huge discrepancy. Well, nowadays it's more common because of political reasons, but back then when this action RPG came out, it didn't make any sense. It's nowhere near as good as the users say it is, nor is it as bad as the critics say. This is an obscure gem that might be a bit grindy and challenging, but the criticism comes from the repetitive nature of it. You do explore similar dungeons and fight similar monsters over and over and over again for the majority of the game. No overworld or towns to explore or anything. Besides, despite being kinda gothic and dark, it also includes some silly magical girl shenanigans, so I get it. Reviews were never going to be super positive, but it's a good fun game with some unique ideas, lovely visuals and decent combat. Anything below 8 or 7.5 at least is questionable at best. I think the reason why the critics' scores are negative is merely because there are just few of them. Barely anyone bothered reviewing this game apparently, but what's even more senseless is the user score. Those are Chrono Cross or Final Fantasy IX scores, dude. Chistar has no business being scored that high. But this is a list about JRPGs destroyed by critics, not suspiciously praised, so let's move on. Number 5, Ragnarok Tactics. This is a grid-based strategy RPG I've defended to death in this channel. A hidden gem that also happens to be very underrated. When websites like Metacritic and IGN give it a simultaneous 6.5, you know something's very wrong in there. Sure, I'm a fanboy, and I'm a bit biased since I'm a die-hard tactical RPGs fan, but that number is insultingly low, and I think you can agree with that. The common complaints are that it's easy and generic. A game with a well-written story, multiple routes and endings, different recruitable characters, and very unique art style. Generic. Easy? What's wrong with a strategy RPG for beginners? Should every damn tactical game be as hard as hell as they universally praised? You want my brutally honest opinion? It looks to me that everything that isn't Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem gets destroyed out there. I'm not kidding. Try to look for almost any grid-based strategy RPG, popular or not, out there, and see the scores for yourself. Number 4, Vanguard Bandits. Let me explain to you why the term hidden gem was created in the first place. It wasn't only to refer to things that were great, but also overlooked for whatever reason. It was also to establish a term for underappreciated stuff. If you pay attention to the scores that have been given to many different games out there that also happen to be obscure, you'll notice a pattern. A pattern from reviewers who either barely played them or got influenced by other reviewers. They just don't want to go against the consensus, so they praise anything the others are praising, and naturally they destroy also what the others are destroying. And boy, you'll see 3 more good examples of that in today's list. Vanguard Bandits got destroyed for the same reasons Ragnarok Tactics was. It wasn't Final Fantasy Tactics. Granted, there's no deep job system here, and it has its flaws like an exhaustion system, but 6.2 and 6.5 as overall scores? Are you kidding me? Did these people even play the game in the first place? Maybe they just don't like mechs and early 90s style for the music and art style. I don't know. Number 3, Grow Lancer, Heritage of War. This is one of my 3 favorite JRPGs of all time. Critics often complain about games being too easy, but also often complain about games being too hard, or in this case, too complex. It's a real-time strategy RPG, and I said this before, but yes, I understand, the genre isn't for everybody. But when something isn't for you, why punish it with a score as low as 6? In both Metacritic and IGN! The user scores are another story, obviously. At this point, we've established that journalists in big websites can be a bit, well, I'm trying to come up with a politically correct term, but I just can't. I feel the reasons why this game scored this low was because nobody took the proper time to try to understand its mechanics. And it's not as complex as its predecessors. And also, it's not as hard as its predecessors. It was long, innovative, mixing action with strategy, with great music and visuals for its time. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this game. If it wasn't their cup of tea, or they couldn't get into it, I get it, but still 6 out of 10? Get the fuck out of here. Number 2, Code Vein. It seems to me critics did play this one. Some of them may have even finished the game. No, barely anyone complained about the fact that it's a brutally difficult game because they know it was inspired by the respected Souls series. Yes, this is a Souls-like, the only one out there I've managed to like. But when most reviewers out there give it a 7, it makes you really wonder why. Was there something too complex with it? Was it unbalanced? Did it have a bad story? No man, we all know why this RPG got a lot of hate, and it was simply because of the waifus. Souls fans like their games boring, bland, with barely any story or dialogue that look and play like a generic Western RPG. So Bandai Namco takes all of that away and brings in the classic anime style to increase their game's personality. But the fan service was too much for these people. So you're telling me fan service is okay for overly praised games like Final Fantasy XII or Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but isn't for Code Vein? Oh, I get it. Any JRPG can have tits and be respected, except for a Souls-like. Okay, gotcha. Number 1, Star Ocean: The Divine Force. Let's try to understand what's wrong with this game. It doesn't have the best graphics ever and had resolution issues. It's unbalanced, quite so in a few boss battles, but so is every single Star Ocean game. You always gotta try a different approach, your usual skills and tactics just won't work for some of them. Sorry, I just can't think of anything else that may have pissed off the critics so bad. They gave these great JRPGs such low scores, including user scores. I'm honestly flabbergasted. Whether I think it's fantastic or not, it doesn't matter. The Divine Force suffered the consequences of being overhyped because it was the big comeback of the series, and it failed apparently. Granted, it wasn't the legendary masterpiece everyone was expecting it to be, but it absolutely did not deserve those scores. It's pathetic that I feel like I have to use the same argument I've been using for a lot of games in this list. Critics just want everything to be AAA Final Fantasy or Persona nowadays, and trash whatever isn't, or probably didn't even play it for more than a couple of hours, or maybe they want every action RPG in existence to be either Souls-like or is? I don't know. It's just another video game to me that proves modern game journalism is sad. Very sad. And those were 10 more great JRPGs destroyed by critics. Did they deserve those scores or not? You be the judge. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your friends. See you next time!